She clung to Tom, her voice trembling as she cried out, "It's enough, my boy. I'm older. I can't keep up with you."
This is African Folktales and Histories. Watch, subscribe, like, and share.
Jane, 60 years old, had lived as a widow for far too long. The quiet nights in her small, dimly lit cottage had stretched endlessly into years, each one heavier than the last. Though she had done her best to fill her days with gardening, knitting, and gossip with the neighbors, there was a void she could no longer ignore. Her body had its own way of speaking, reminding her in stolen moments, when she lay in bed at night or brushed her hair before the mirror, that she was still a woman with desires. These feelings, once tucked neatly away after her husband's passing, now roared to life, impossible to suppress. Jane wanted a man, not just for companionship, but for the deep satisfaction she craved in the private hours of the night. One moonlit evening, unable to sleep, Jane sat up in her creaking bed. Her heart pounded with a mix of nerves and determination. She had decided she wouldn't wait for fate to send her a man. She would take control of her destiny. A bold idea formed in her mind, a plan to meet someone who could satisfy her long-neglected needs. Jane's plan was simple but clever. Tomorrow, she would go to the village market, where men often gathered to shop, sell, or simply linger. She would carry a heavy crate of soda bottles, a task no woman of her age could easily manage alone. Surely, one of the men would step forward to help her. When he did, Jane would seize the moment. She'd look him in the eyes, thank him sincerely, and then tell him the truth. She needed a man. Someone who could bring warmth back into her nights and laughter to her days. Perhaps he could help her, even if just for one night, or, if the stars aligned, something more lasting. The thought made her cheeks flush with a mix of embarrassment and excitement, but Jane was resolved. She wouldn't let loneliness and unfulfilled desires rule her life anymore. The next morning, Jane woke early, her heart fluttering with anticipation. She dressed carefully, choosing a simple yet flattering dress that accentuated her figure. Her hair was brushed until it shone, and she added a touch of perfume, a scent she hadn't worn in years. At the market, she lifted the heavy crate of soda bottles onto a wooden cart and began pulling it slowly through the bustling square. The weight of the crate strained her arms, and she made sure to look as though she was struggling, a performance that was not entirely untrue. It didn't take long for a man to notice her. He was tall, with broad shoulders and kind eyes, perhaps in his late 50s. He stepped forward, concern etched on his face. "Let me help you with that," he said, his voice warm. Jane's heart skipped a beat. This was her moment. As the man hefted the crate with ease, Jane smiled, her hands trembling slightly. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but steady. "You're very kind." The man nodded. "It's no trouble. Where are you taking this?" Jane hesitated for a moment, then decided to take the leap. "Actually," she began, her cheeks flashing, "I was hoping you might stay for a moment. I have something to ask you." The man raised an eyebrow, curious but polite. "Of course. What is it?" Taking a deep breath, Jane said, "I've been alone for a long time, and I'm looking for someone who can keep me company. Someone strong, like you." The man blinked, clearly taken aback, but then a slow smile spread across his face. The man chuckled nervously, shifting the crate in his hands. "But Mom," he said, his eyes scanning Jane from head to toe, "you're older than me. How could something like this work?" Jane straightened her back and looked him squarely in the eyes, her tone confident and unwavering. "Age is just a number," she said, her voice carrying a hint of flirtation. "What matters is what we can bring to each other's lives. And don't worry, I have all the wealth you could ever need. Just accept me, and I promise, you won't regret it." The man's eyebrows shot up, his interest clearly piqued. "Wealth. You have wealth." Jane smiled slyly, her hands resting on her hips. "Oh, yes. A lot. Enough to ensure neither of us will ever want for anything again. The man set the crate down, his demeanor changing in an instant. He extended his hand toward Jane, his grin wide and eager. Well then, Mum, I'm not going anywhere. From now on, we'll be heading to yours. Jane's heart raced as they walked together to the edge of the market where her old sedan waited. She handed him the keys, and with a gallant flourish, he opened the passenger door for her before sliding into the driver's seat. We'll stop by the supermarket first, Jane said as they pulled away from the bustling square. If you're staying, we'll need something special for dinner. The man nodded, already envisioning the feast. What's your name, by the way? Jane, she replied. And you? Thomas, he said. But you can call me Tom. Looks like we'll be spending a lot of time together. As they loaded the groceries into the car, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Jane's heart thudded with excitement, and Tom's thoughts brimmed with ambition. The drive back to Jane's cottage was quiet, yet thick with anticipation. The sky was fully dark now, the stars twinkling above the winding village roads. Tom glanced at Jane occasionally, the smirk tugging at his lips. Jane, on the other hand, felt her pulse quicken with every mile. When they arrived, Jane wasted no time. She led Tom inside, where the warm glow of a lamp illuminated the cozy living room. Make yourself comfortable, she said, gesturing toward a worn but inviting armchair. I'll get started on dinner. Tom nodded, settling into the chair, his eyes darting around the room. The neatness of the house, the fine curtains, and the delicate china displayed on the shelves all hinted at the comfortable life Jane had described. He could already imagine himself living there. In the kitchen, Jane worked with a speed that belied her age. She seasoned the steaks, sautéed the vegetables, and poured 2 glasses of red wine. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind was elsewhere, filled with images of what the night would bring. Smells amazing, Tom called from the living room, his voice laced with eagerness. Jane laughed softly. Good food for good company, she replied, plating the meal with care. Within minutes, the table was set, and she called Tom over. Tom sat across from Jane at the small wooden table, his eyes lighting up as he took in the spread before him. This looks incredible, he said, reaching for his fork. Jane smiled, pouring more wine into their glasses. I hope it's to your liking. Eat up, you'll need your strength, she added with a playful wink. Tom chuckled, his cheeks flushing slightly. Don't worry about that. I've got plenty of energy. They ate quickly, exchanging smiles and light conversation. The food was delicious, but it wasn't the main event. Both of them knew what lay ahead, and their minds raced with anticipation. As they finished their meal, the air between them grew heavier. Jane, ever efficient, began collecting the plates, stacking them neatly and carrying them to the sink. She could feel Tom's eyes on her as she moved, and a thrill coursed through her. Tom leaned back in his chair, a satisfied grin on his face. That was the best meal I've had in years, he said. But I think dessert is still waiting. Jane turned to him, her smile slow and knowing. Oh, it is. Let me just finish up here. With the plates cleared and the air between them thick with anticipation, Jane led Tom up the narrow staircase to her bedroom. The cottage was small, but the room was warm and inviting, with soft lamplight casting a golden glow over the neatly made bed. Tom glanced around briefly before his eyes settled on Jane, who stood by the bed, her expression a mixture of nerves and excitement. She smoothed her dress unconsciously, then looked up at him. Well, she said softly, I suppose we should make ourselves comfortable. Tom smiled, stepping closer. I couldn't agree more. As Jane turned down the lamp, Tom gently reached for her hand, pulling her close. Their eyes met, and before she could second-guess herself, his lips captured hers in a slow, lingering kiss. Jane's breath hitched, and she felt a rush of emotions, nervousness, joy, and a long-forgotten sense of desire. Their kisses deepened, each one more urgent than the last, as Tom's hands traced the curves of her body. Jane, though initially hesitant, found herself responding with a passion she hadn't realized she still possessed. As they moved to the bed, their laughter mixed with soft whispers. Jane felt alive in a way she hadn't in years, her heart pounding as Tom's touch sent shivers down her spine. They explored each other with the tender curiosity of two people rediscovering the joys of intimacy. "Tom," Jane murmured between kisses, her voice breathless. "It's been so long. I didn't know I still could feel like this." Tom grinned, his hands gently cradling her face. "You're incredible, Jane. Age doesn't matter, what we have right now is all that counts." As their passion reached its peak, Jane's emotions overwhelmed her. She clung to Tom, her voice trembling as she cried out, "It's enough, my boy. I'm older. I can't keep up with you." Tom chuckled, his voice low and teasing. "I thought you said you wanted enough service, Jane. We are just getting started." Jane laughed despite herself, her cheeks flushed with warmth. "You're impossible." Tom leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "And you're amazing. Let me take care of you tonight."